We move over to pass catchers here, and we start with Garrett Wilson, who's coming off a week where he had the catch of the year. People are wondering, though, is it the catch of the last 10 years? Garrett Wilson was asked this week on if his catch was better than OBJ's. Take a listen.
Man, Odell's, it was different, and he got 2 feet down. The ball was finna land out of bounds, and it was Odell, man. It was Odell against the Cowboys. Like, that was the one. So for it to even come up in that convo, I'm blessed. I'm honored. But yeah, man, Odell got that's that boy.
But Garrett, you lost that game.
You know what? All right. Fair enough.
Love-hate pass catchers. Garrett Wilson. Matthew, it's been interesting. It feels like when the Jets traded for Davante Adams, some people had some fear it would hurt Garrett Wilson, but it's been the exact opposite. He's been phenomenal now.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's opened up the field, and suddenly when you're a defensive coordinator facing the Jets, it's a little bit of pick your poison, right? And so, I mean, I know Alan Lazard wasn't there last week, but there was times out there when you had all 3 guys, and so you're trying to figure out where am I trying to focus my defensive attention, right? I mean,
he's not going to be there for the next couple of weeks, Alan Lazard. So this is
true, but it's like, but you still have 2 elite wide receivers that can run pretty much every route, and has a quarterback that is as good as anyone in the NFL at immediately reading a defense and changing a play at the line of scrimmage and going where the coverage isn't, finding the open guy. There's a lot that you can criticize Aaron Rodgers about, but that ain't one of them. And so Garrett Wilson now has had back-to-back games with a 30% target share, at least 6 targets in every game, all 3, since Davante Adams came over from the Raiders. And every wide receiver that's seen at least a 30% target share, that's why I brought up that number, against the Cardinals this year has scored at least 18 fantasy points. Cardinals also allow the 5th highest catch rate to opposing wide receivers, so maybe Garrett Wilson isn't going to need to only do it with one hand. He can do it, comfortably with 2 hands. But Davante Adams opening up the defense, and also, honestly, like, the Jets getting into more game script. Like, the Jets were expected to be this elite defensive unit, and they're not. No. They have a good secondary, but like you can move the ball on the Jets. You can certainly run on the Jets, and so as a result, they've had to be in more negative game script than I think people thought coming into the year.
Yep. You know what catch never gets mentioned in this OBJ, Garrett Wilson discussion? The best catch I've ever seen in my life was Julio Jones in the Super Bowl. And no one brings that up because they lost the game.
Right.
But that doesn't change how good the catch was. And when everyone was watching that, everyone's breath was taken away. And it was in the Super Bowl. And just the stakes different. Anyway, Julio Jones aside. Also, Santonio Holmes made an insane catch to win the Super Bowl too. That doesn't get brought up in the same discussion.
He didn't. By the way, I go back and look at the, if you want to just go down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole, go down and look at pictures of that Santonio Holmes catch, because I think there's an argument that he did not get both feet down, that one foot was on top of the other foot, that like he actually technically got 1 foot down, and that shouldn't have been a touchdown. Because seriously, go back and you know what I'm talking about. Like go back and look at, like, if you look, people like Zapruder film, they've looked at zoomed in on it. It looks like 1 foot's on top of the other. It was an insane catch. There's no question about it. Listen, you can go through catches all the time. Just even the Super Bowl, that same game, the Julio Jones one. How about Edelman?
I was going to say
the
that's
Edelman
what's
catch
nuts about it.
The Edelman catch is ridiculous.
Also, never gets brought up, but a horrific decision from Matt Ryan to throw that ball. You got the lead in the Super Bowl.
Nobody cares.
Should have been picked.
And I mean, listen, obviously David Tyree is the one that gets brought up all the time as well. But and I want to say, why am I blanking on the name of the? But as soon as I say the name of no one. Here's another catch that's unbelievable that no one ever talks about in the Super Bowl. Seattle, right?
What's his name? Chris
was it Jermaine? No, it was Jermaine.
Chris.
It's like
Jermaine Kearse.
Jermaine Kearse. Jermaine Kearse. Like,
that was kind of fluky though. I was thinking of the other.
But he comes down with. My point is, no one talks about it because the whole Marshawn Lynch and they don't, and Russ throws the pick. But like,
you got to win the game unless you're OBJ.
Unless you're OBJ. But my point is like that was an unbelievable catch down the sideline. A little bit fluky, but whatever. Like the catch I remember, it's not on the level of this, but just the catch that I remember do you remember this? You might be too young, but Antonio Freeman on Monday night against the Vikings, where it was on his back and he rolls over and catches it.
I've seen it, yes.
That's before I was born. I'm 19, I'm 2 years old, younger than Connor.
One of the first things I used to do at ESPN is I did a fantasy football show, my very first year, and we did some specials, and we had Antonio Freeman on the show, and so I got to know Free. Everyone calls him Free. No, that's his nickname. If you meet him, he calls him Free. And I remember asking about that catch. He goes, "That comes up every day in my life, he's like the two things that people bring up to me all the time are fantasy football and that catch. I'm like, oh, there you go. I get it. Antonio Freeman was great back in the day.
Yeah.
He was a very good fantasy wide receiver.
Highlights.
Great for the Packers. Go Pack, go.
We continue our pass
I'm all over the
catchers.
place today.
No, you on a Thursday?
By the way, while we're staying all over the place, you said the word conspiracy theories before, which made me realize that Aaron Rodgers' odds to be the president in 2028 are shorter than the Jets' odds to win the Super Bowl this year. So that's where you're at the moment. So you may have the president, but you don't have the Super Bowl.
You know what? That's because RFK is not going to be part of the, he's going to be in the cabinet probably, right?
Yeah.
And like
So Rodgers would run
he's gonna,
for actual president.
Right? Yeah, he could
Who would be
potentially.
his VP?
Well, Rodgers could be
obviously Alan
No. He could, if RFK runs in 2028.
It's in play.
Yeah, it's in play.
I feel better about that than the Jets winning the Super Bowl this year.
Vance will probably run as well, but I'm just saying,
Rodgers.
Yeah, Rodgers could
and
be a VP candidate.
the great thing is, when you're president, you don't have to run motion. You just got to set defense whenever you want.
Yes. Oh boy.
Anyway.
Well, I guess we'll go back to Deebo Samuel.
Yep.
Deebo Samuel makes the love list. He just misses the top 10 as wide receiver 11 for Matthew. The Bucs have allowed 18-plus fantasy points to a wide receiver in 4 of their past 5 games. This Todd Bowles secondary is just dreadful this year.
Yeah, and by the way, no Brandon Ayuk. Unfortunately, Brandon Ayuk out for the year. And in his first game without Brandon Ayuk, 28% target share. 4 of the past 6 games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, led by Todd Bowles, has allowed at least 18 fantasy points, right? They've allowed the 6th most yards after the catch to wide receivers this season. Why do I bring that up? Thank you for asking. Deebo Samuel, top 5 among wide receivers in yards after the catch. He's so good in that aspect. 49ers maybe, hopefully, possibly also get Christian McCaffrey back in this game, which I think will also open up the offense. No disrespect to Jordan Mason or Isaac Guerrero, who have done a nice job in his steed, but they ain't CMC. And so just this offense is going to look different, assuming McCaffrey can go. And Deebo Samuel is going to be the focal point of what should be a very successful and productive passing game for San Fran.
Why is this Bucs pass defense so bad? Because they have Antoine Winfield. Zion McCollum is the number 1 cornerback in the league by PFF grade. It's not like Jordan White is that bad, I don't think. He was fine on the Jets, wasn't he?
He's very streaky, though. Like, he's feast or famine. He had 3 pick games, then he'll have games where he's single-handedly responsible for multiple touchdowns. Winfield's been hurt a decent amount this year, but still a great player. They just don't have the corners right now. And the way they match up is very odd. The way they pick their coverages, I think it is a talent issue. They've lost a lot of corners to free agency over the years, but here's the number 1 reason, Jay. They have no pass rush. Besides Yaya Diaby, they have no pass rush. Those guys are out there on an island. They don't stand a chance.
Yep. I guess it was encouraging that they were able to get Mahomes under pressure a little bit, but that was largely just, I think, Vita Vea playing out of his mind for a stretch. But yeah, it just doesn't seem like this team hasn't had any answers on David. They got 27 points to Spencer Rattler. It doesn't look great.
No, it's not great. You know what they should have done? You know what the Buccaneers should have done is they should have traded for Marshawn Lattimore, but they didn't. Because my Commanders did. Hail Commanders, hail victory.
We were pretty deep into the show without Commanders, to be honest with you.
Just saying Marshawn
People
Lattimore.
that played the over.
Just saying Marshawn Lattimore was out there for the taking, and a team that needed secondary help, the Buccaneers weren't able to get him, but the Commanders were.
Our next wide receiver, Josh Downs. He's got the Bills, but more importantly...
By the way, Marshawn Lattimore, I'll pay the next fine you have. I don't care. Get into a fight. I don't care.
Wow.
Yeah, bring it on. Oh, yeah, I'll pay the next fine. I'm so in.
Those are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
For somebody that doesn't really plan on this show continuing.
You might also be having to catch that pretty quickly. He's playing George Pickens this week.
So
there's going to be a fight.
There probably is going to be a fight, and I'm probably going to have to get unemployment after this show from NBC. I may need to be on a payment plan for the fee.
You better have a good Thursday Night Football bet up your sleeve. We'll have our parlay cash again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Josh Downs, he's got the Bills, but more importantly, Jay, he's still got Joe Flacco, who he has a 29% target share from throughout the season.
Yep. And so I think there is a compound effect of the Joe Flacco experience, which isn't talked about as much, which is that I think the run game for the Colts is just going to be worse with Flacco because you don't have to cover for Anthony Richardson. Right. He's not taking another guy out of the box. We saw how Jonathan Taylor has struggled with Joe Flacco at quarterback in terms of efficiency. So I think that's just going to make them need to throw the ball more often. And Josh Downs, huge target rate with Flacco. I think he has surpassed Michael Pittman as just the best wide receiver on this team. And so, yeah, I think he's a viable wide receiver 2 type each week.
He's played 4 games with Joe Flacco. He's got at least 6 receptions in all of them. He lines up in the slot, and I bring that up, of course, because the Bills, they're allowed the 4th most receptions to the opposing slot. So in a game in which Indianapolis should be throwing often, Joe Flacco is going to be under pressure. Hopefully they can give him time. But when even in a brutal game last week against Minnesota, where he was constantly under pressure, he was able only to complete 16 passes, like over a third of them went to Josh Downs. So like he's the apple of Joe Flacco's eye.
Cade Otton makes the list, a top 5 tight end. Matthew, he's got 3 straight games with 10-plus targets and 8-plus receptions. The injuries to Godwin and Mike Evans have really had this pass offense funnel through Cade Otton.
20 points with in both games that Evans and Godwin has missed. 3 straight games now with double-digit targets, 3 straight games with at least 8 receptions. Since week 7, Cade Otton is the number 1 tight end in fantasy football. Now, they're going to bye after this week, and then Mike Evans is expected back, so the window of elite Cade Ottenness might be closing, but at least for this week against the 49ers, who since week 5 is allowing the 3rd most receptions per game to opposing tight ends, Cade Otton is a top 3 fantasy tight end for me this week.
Yep. I think when Evans comes back, he just falls back to being 7, tight end 8, like that type of range.
Yeah, still very viable.
Still being a top 8 tight end.
Some others
still not going to have Godwin.
No, he's done.
Some others. That's grim.
Sorry. Sorry, Chris.
He's alive.
I know you watched the show.
Others receiving votes.
He's sitting at home rehabbing. Let me just tune on Peacock. Let me see.
What
Let me
they're
see what's
airing
going on.
these
Yeah,
days?
let's see what my guys are going on. Baker said that Australian bloke was very friendly. Posted a picture of just the 2 of them on social media. Let me see what's going on.
Oh, I'm done.
Done.
Oh, wow. He doesn't seem that friendly at all. Seems angry.
Here's
like
some other pass catchers receiving votes. Tank Dell, who got some action, of course, against the Jets with both Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs out. Ladd McConkey, the rookie, has really formed a connection with Justin Herbert. Xavier Legette going to get a ton of work now as Deontay Johnson is with the Ravens. Adam Thielen's still hurt with the Panthers.
And Jonathan Mingo traded for a 4th rounder.
Jonathan Mingo's gone. How could I forget?
Yeah.
Finally, the door is open for Xavier Legette.
That Mingo was dealt for a 4th.
Roma Dunze, a deeper cut here. And then Mike Gesicki on Thursday Night Football. We're going to talk plenty about him. And Jonnu Smith sneaks in as tight end 10, Matthew, against the Rams.
4 straight games with at least 6 targets for Jonnu Smith. Rams allow the 6th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. We'll get to Gesicki in the next segment as well. But you know what? Very quietly over the past 2 games, since their bye, Roma Dunze has a 23% target share. It feels very, very clearly that he's surpassed Keenan Allen on the passing chart for the Patriots, and my expectation here is Christian Gonzalez is going to be on DJ Moore. So Dunze should have some nice production from him as a wide receiver 4. You mentioned Legette, very quietly touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games for the Panther, 22% target share in the last 2 weeks in what should be a good matchup against the Giants. McConkey, since week 4, very quietly the 17th best wide receiver in fantasy football on a points per game basis. And Tank Dell, who plays for the Houston Texans. Jay, you and I, Lawrence Jackson, and George Savarikas will be in Houston at the Applebee's near the Galleria because that night, assuming I'm not fired, 50-50 at this point, I will be on the sideline at NRG Stadium to watch Tank Dell play this Detroit Lions defense. No team allows more receptions and yards per game to opposing wide receivers than the Detroit Lions. And in 3 of the 4 games that Nico Collins has missed, Tank Dell has at least 13 fantasy points. I think he's a viable top 20 play this. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.